Hi, it's John Glynn, and today I'm going to have a quick look at the Lasso Tools, which are in your toolbox on the left hand side of your picture. In Photoshop Elements 20, it's also in other versions of Photoshop, the Lasso Tools, and I'm just using a PC with a mouse, so nothing special that I'm going to try out. It's a standard kit. Now, with the Lasso tool, the idea of Lasso tools is that you can make selections, and by making selections you can cut them out. I may want to take this horse out of the picture, something like that. So we might want to use the Lasso tool for doing so. We have a freehand Lasso tool, which means that you can just drag, holding down your left mouse key, and quickly go around your subject, and you then go back to the beginning, and when you go back to the beginning it will link up, and there you have it. You made a quick selection. It's rough and ready, it's not ideal, but it may be a starting point in making a selection, and it may be good enough for what you're looking for. To refine selections, we have an option here, refine selection. Refining the selection allows you to see your selection in different ways, because you've got a little view option, marching ants, which is what we had to start with, an overlay, so you can see it with a pinky reddish overlay, on black, white on black, white on black, or white on white rather, so the picture against white, black on white, which may be quite useful sometimes, and on layers, so it without any picture behind, and reveal the layer without any of the selection. If we go to these sort of black and white options, and we then play around with these options here, smoothing and feathering in particular, we're feathering edges. The idea here is that the edge of your selection is not overly sharp, so it doesn't look like you've necessarily cut it out with a pair of with a knife or something and stuck it onto another picture. You would be doing it subtly, so in that case you might want a little bit of softening at the edge. Now that is on this side of the picture, on the left hand side of the picture, and on the right hand side of the picture as well, is the softening effect. It's equal on both sides of the divide, if you like, and you over feather could look a bit weird, so it may be a very slight feathering. Smooth is like a very subtle feathering. Effectively, it smooths the edge of your selection, so they don't look like they've been pixelated so much. So you may use these in combination. Contrast will sharpen that edge, so if you up the contrast of an edge which has been feathered, it will bring it back into sharpness again. So it's just trying to work out when you would use each of these to improve your picture. And edge shift, if I drag that to the right, so that's my phone, if I drag that to the right it expands, and if I drag it to the left it shrinks. It usually is left at 0, and the reason we might do that is if you're equally wrong all the way around your selection, so it's equally out, you can drag it closer in, or if it's equally too close in, you can push it out. It's quite useful for hair, probably more so than it would be for major big objects, but usually it would be on 0. I'm just going to clear that and just put it back to 0 by clicking in it and using my keyboard. So there we have 0, and usually these are set on 0 as the usual setting, and then you would make changes as you see fit. Decontaminating colors would be, for instance, like hair. If you were selecting hair and you had a colored background, you may want to stop that background coming into your picture. Then decontaminating colors and defining how much to take out, you would use this particular tool, this bit of it, and you got a new layer mask. Different ways of selecting this so that it comes as a layer mask, which would be in the same layer as you're working in, a new layer without a mask, and a new layer with a mask, or into other documents. So if I say new layer with a mask and I said OK, I now have my horse's head with a new layer but it's got a mask around it, so the actual picture is still there. If I turn this off, disable the layer mask, there's my photo. Enable layer mask, I'm just clicking the right mouse key and clicking it. It comes back on again, and this enables us to continue working on the photograph over after we've made our selection, basically. So my other videos will show you in more detail how you can use it, but this is the basic principle, is that you can cut things out, put it into a different background, or change the background in some way. The quick lasso tool will let you do that. Just the basic lasso tool, it's called Lasso Tool, will give you a quick, rough and ready way of cutting things out. You would then maybe have to adjust it a bit further to refine it, okay, which you could do at this stage. Because I've created a mask, I can continue working on it if I wish. Okay, I'm not going to go too much detail of that in this stage because they are for later lessons. So what I'm going to do now is take that one out and go back to my normal picture. I've just dumped it in the dustbin, and I'm going to go to the next. Magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool works in a slightly different way. We have ways of working with this particular tool. You'll see you'll have width and contrast and frequency and feathering. What happens with this one is when I click with the left mouse key and start to make a selection, it will add anchor points all the way along the selection, and these anchor points are trying to find an edge between my subject and the background, and the bigger the contrast difference, the easier it is for this to work. Okay, if you're finding that it can't sit easily, then upping the contrast can help. When you're coming to particular change of direction, just click once with the left mouse key and adds an extra anchor point. So each time I click with the left mouse key, an anchor point is added, and when I want to go all the way back to the beginning of my selection, it's automatically finding this weird edge. Click with the left mouse key, go back to the beginning, and when you start back at the very beginning of where you started, the magnetic lasso will find the beginning, and it will give you a little circle, a tiny circle just by the magnet. When that tiny circle appears, you click once with the left mouse key and it gives you the marching ants marquee. Now, as you can see, it hasn't done a particularly brilliant job. It's missed out lots of bits, so therefore we may want to add to the selection or take away from the selection. To add to the selection, we hold down the shift key on the keyboard and you get a little plus sign. If I want to add to the selection, I click on my starting point, move along, and all I'm doing is clicking, and if I keep clicking, and I'm clicking more and more, it is actually having difficulty doing this one because of the contrast. I'm back to the beginning. It will bring it out. I may have to work on smaller areas just because it's having difficulty in finding it. I can start on the inside, work outside, back in, and I keep clicking with left mouse key and add anchor points. Start again on that because it jumped. I'm back to the beginning, and it'll pull it out. So I'm adding to the selection. It is quite slow, it's not easy to use, you have to work very slowly with this. If I'm wanting to take away from the selection, I don't think there is on this bit, but if I was, then the Alt key on the keyboard gives me a minus sign, and I can work from the outside in and back out, back to the beginning, and it's actually cut it in. So it's actually yes, that's right, because I wanted to take away, that's right, take away from the selection. Let's try to do that again, and it will cut into the selection. If I want to add to the selection, I would hold down the shift key, work from the outside, and back to the beginning, and it will pull it out. So you just have to get used to the Alt and Shift key. You can also use these little buttons at the very bottom of your photo where it says add to selection and subtract from selection, but the Shift key and Alt key are the quickest way of doing it. Shift key gives you a plus, Alt key a minus. It's not straightforward, so just take your time getting practiced with it. It's certainly good practice with your mouse and your keys. The other thing it does is width. The bigger the width, the less control you have over the selection. To clear the selection, by the way, just click inside it once with the left mouse key and the selection will vanish. As I've upped the width, let's just see, in fact, is it doing a better job? No, it doesn't really do such a good job. As you up the selection, it doesn't find the edge so easily. Okay, and it will automatically start at the beginning again if I click it. If I down the selection, down the width rather, reduce the width and then start again, it gives a better, it's more able to find an edge. Okay, as you can see, it's more, so it's more, it's more accurate with a finer width, especially if things are very, very close to the original or the background color. If you contrast on this one, it may need to be up quite high. The actual background color is very, very similar to the foreground. Each time you click a left mouse, each time you click the should work. Yeah, each time you click the left mouse key, you'll get a little anchor point being added. So it's a matter of just getting used to this particular selection tool. Down the width, down the contrast, sorry, and just see whether it's still working just as well. Not quite, maybe. It's a matter of getting used to the tool, just working with it. It's not doing too bad a job. Back to the beginning, gives me a selection. Immediately you click, by the way, with the left mouse key, it starts to select, so you do have to be a little bit careful with it. So if I go back to the starting point, get that funny little circle. When I go back to starting point, click once with the left mouse key and it will give you that marquee. If I'm outside and I click once, it immediately starts making another selection. Okay, if I want to clear that selection, click inside the selection once to clear it. If you click twice, it will start doing the selection yet again. Okay, so it can become quite a difficult tool to use. If it goes off on a tangent, by the way, then rather than trying to start again, just click the backspace key and keep going back on the backspace key. I'm moving my mouse up the selection and clicking the backspace key at the same time. Oops. And we can get back to square one eventually by just using the backspace key. And there we have it, back to, and then click once with the left mouse key and start again. Okay, and then back to where you started from, that little circle by the magnifier, by the magnet rather, and click once with the left mouse key and it will create your marquee. As I said before, maybe easier in this guy here, hold down the plus sign, work from the outside in. I'm just clicking with the left mouse key to create anchor points and it will add to the selection. Alt key, work from the inside out and back in again, back to square one, and it will pull the selection in. And the other thing that you've got is frequency. Frequency in the very bottom here under contrast, there's frequency. it's how quickly those anchor points are put in without you clicking the left mouse key. So if I do a low frequency, then it's all over the shop for one thing. But if you hold it in a straight line, if I do it in a straight line, you can see it better, I think. Let's go back to square one. Anchor points, if you change direction, you get an anchor point. But if you keep it in a straight line, there aren't very many. Okay, I'll just quickly go back to square one. And if I up the frequency and do a straight line, you get more anchor points or more quickly. Okay, it seems to be more accurate with upping the frequency, so that seems to be the main thing there. And feathering, again, as with the other tools, is to do with softening edges. So if you want a soft edge to your selection, you can feather. Now in this particular version of the software, there is no, or at this point in the software, there is no refine edge, but you can come out of this particular tool, pop to one of the other options. I'm just going back to normal lasso, and I've got refine edge, and there I got refine edge in that one. Okay, and I can up the contrast to make it sharper if I think it's been too soft when I started doing it. So you can start using the you can go into other tools to use refine edge if you want to. The other thing you can do, if I were to do a quick selection, quickly select the horse's head. I'm in the wrong tool now, aren't I? Let's get out of that one and go back to magnetic, and go back into magnetic, quickly drag it round the horse's head, just so you get an idea of what it looks like. I can go up to layer, new layer, layer via copy, and I now have the horse's head as a layer, but it hasn't got a mask. Okay, so if I turn off the bottom layer, there it is, and it's got a soft edge, as you can tell. Okay, just to note, it's got a soft edge, soft feathered edge. So that's you can still do a you can still do a selection, you can still do a cutout, but by going to layer, new layer, and be layer via copy. Okay, when you've made your selection, that's another option. If you do layer via cut, you'll literally cut the picture out. And the other tool you have in this little group is called the Polygonal Lasso tool. The Polygonal Lasso tool, each time you click once with the left mouse key, lets you change angle, and you can do straight lines. So I'm just moving it up and down with my mouse. Click once with the left mouse key and I can do angles. So it's quite handy for walls. You can move these around, by the way, by being inside them and holding down the left mouse key. You can move these around. It probably isn't very good for the horse, because the horse unfortunately isn't just straight lines. It's got angles in it which are not really suitable for a straight line tool. Okay, so it would be fine for boxes, but it's not very good for this sort of subject matter. But it might be that it gives you a starting point, again, as a very quick way of making a selection. And again, when you go back to the start point, you'll get a funny little circle just by the symbol, by the actual symbol itself on your monitor, you'll get a tiny circle to say yes, you're back to square one. Click once with the left mouse key and it will do the marquee. And then you can again refine edge. Okay, you've got choices here to refine edge, feather and smooth and so on. So you've got again the options that you had in the first basic lasso tool, you have in this bit of the lasso tool as well. Have a go with these, because although there are other ways of making selections now, and probably for most people quicker ways of making selections in Photoshop Elements, it's still a useful way of getting used to using the mouse and or your pen tool if you're using a pen, and just getting used to creating selections, things like that. So it's no harm in trying these out and getting an understanding of them. They're not the magnetic lasso tool is actually the hardest of the three to use. So if you're going to use them slowly, take a bit of time over them, practice with them, and just have a go, okay, at using these tools and seeing how you want to get on with them. If for getting rid of these marquees, if you're having problems clearing a marquee for any reason, you can always go up to select and deselect. So select and deselect, and that will clear the marquees. So if you're having problems with marquees and they're getting totally confused for any reason, go up to select and deselect and start again. Okay. Hopefully that will give you an indication as to what they each do. Have a go. And the easiest one to use is obviously the basic lasso tool. I would start with that one and then have a go with the others, and you'll learn quite a lot with just using them. Okay, that'll do. Thanks very much for watching.